So this video will be the first in what I'm hoping to make a recurring series on this channel called Ordinary Thoughts. The purpose is basically that as anyone who's given even a cursory glance at my channel can tell, I'm pretty slow to output videos. And as a result, I put a lot of pressure on myself to make those videos feel meaningful and well-researched and well-produced to the best of my current ability. Which ends up making this vicious cycle where I feel like I have to spend more time on videos because of how long I've typically taken to make them, and you see how that can make problems for someone in an algorithm that really emphasizes frequency and consistency of uploads. So this series is meant to be a solution to that. The idea is basically that for topics and ideas I don't think I would be able to say enough about to make a more intensely produced video out of, or that I just want to say something that's a little bit more off the cuff where I'm not trying to make a super rigorous argument, I can just make a shorter, more informal video. In this video, I want to make the best version, or at least the best version I can currently think to make, of one side of a debate that has plagued the online left for at least long enough for there to be a Le Tigre song about it. That being the whole touch grass debate. Or this conflict between people whose primary mode of activism is posting and arguing with people online, versus people who think that shouldn't be a person's main or only political activity. Like most online arguments, there's not really a fair way to set up the opposing sides. I mean, the whole touch grass thing is just meant to be insulting to the people who are perceived to be too online as a kind of diagnosis for having discussions that are judged to be so divorced from reality that they just need to go be in the real world to fix it. You know, to touch grass. Join an organization, do something in your community, whatever. And to be clear, I do think this is basically true. But I think there's this inherent framing there that implies that the opposition thinks that actually arguing about bestiality on Twitter is the real activism. And I just don't buy that at all. I mean, some people definitely do think that, but I don't think I want those people to get offline, honestly. It's too late for them. Granted, I try not to pay too much attention to these arguments, but from what I've seen, it definitely seems like the main opposition to this argument is not that arguing online is preferable or even really comparable to doing real-life activism, but that you shouldn't shame people for not doing activism in real life because some people have disabilities, some people's jobs can be too taxing, some people are too young and their parents won't let them. Which honestly itself can be kind of disingenuous. I mean, I don't think the idea of the argument that doing real-life activism is better or more effective than posting is that people who physically can't do that are bad. But the core is basically, I can't or won't do offline activism, and that doesn't make me a bad leftist. And then some set of reasons as to why it's bad to want them to do anything other than post. Anyway, I'm hoping to address people who can't or don't touch grass for any reason. Not to make you feel bad, but just to make the good faith version of an argument that I think is valid, but that I mostly see being made for the sake of being mean. I think I'm actually in a pretty good position to talk about this because I've essentially been on both sides. For the first few years of my political development toward the left, I was pretty much just a full-on keyboard warrior, and on some level I definitely believed that arguing with people on Facebook or Tumblr or Reddit or in comment sections under articles was a kind of activism. Every Reddit karma represents a victory for social justice. But mostly, I just didn't have the motivation or understanding of how to do anything else, so I did what I felt was accessible to me. And over the past few years, since my last few semesters of school and into the present, I've made a slow movement to more in-person activism. Currently, what that looks like for me is helping with food distribution with my building's tenants union once a week, doing some work for my local DSA branch, and very sporadically attending a reading group. Between that, my full-time job, and trying to do more with my channel, that's about as much as I can juggle right now without feeling overwhelmed. And I would recommend any of those things to pretty much anyone. When I was in school, I was very much not the type who would do a whole bunch of extracurriculars because I always felt like anything I gave my time to would just take over my life. So I've been really happy to report that all of these things have felt really voluntary, and I've been able to choose how much time I'm able to give. The DSA in particular has been really respectful of whatever I say I can or can't do time-wise, and I'm really getting something out of all of them. Doing food distribution is really great because it feels like I'm directly doing something for people. And I'm not just doing it in a volunteer capacity. The people I'm helping and most of the people I'm working with are my neighbors. And they're varying degrees of radical, but they're working together in this generous way that I wish I saw more of on the left. It really kind of puts a lot of online leftism into perspective, because at the end of the day, the people building a better world are going to be doing this kind of work. Working with the DSA is a lot less on the ground, but it's helped by this sense that I'm contributing to something bigger. Now, I'm a dues-paying member, but I'm not convinced the DSA is going to be the force that gives us any iteration of a socialist world. But they're trying, or at least trying in that direction, and contributing to the maintenance of that feels like enough of a contribution to me that it staves off some of that feeling of impotence that we're also accustomed to. And the reading group is just really refreshing in a lot of ways. My friends who are really online and I are always talking about the same bullshit, but when I go to my reading group, there's a bunch of seasoned organizers and working people and college students, and they're talking about all kinds of things. But they're also disagreeing about all kinds of things, and those disagreements aren't getting filtered through the same culture war, binary opposition as everything online. And honestly, it's just so much better for my brain. I'm kind of forced to remember that there's a real person I'm talking to with their own perspective, so I have to actually parse what they're saying and respond to that instead of responding to what I assume they're saying. If you're someone who does most of your political engagement on the internet, it can be hard to get involved in real-life activism for a lot of reasons. It's hard to know where to start. You might not want to join an organization you feel doesn't live up to your political ideals. We're in a pandemic and you just don't think now is the time to start doing that kind of thing in person. You may have a job that's time-consuming or emotionally taxing, or both, and I can relate to a lot of that. I remember thinking for months, God, I need to join an organization, before I ever did, and the first one I ever got involved with was just because I happened to find them at a club fair. It's important to remember that getting involved doesn't have to take over your life. You will encounter people who are basically superhuman and give incredible amounts of themselves to a movement or an organization. And while those people are vital to any project, you don't have to meet that standard unless you feel personally called to it. A bunch of people doing a little bit is tremendously helpful, and in a lot of cases there's work that can be done online or that requires very little time contribution. Most places, if you tell them you want to help and are very clear about your limitations, they'll be able to find something for you to do, and they'll be grateful to you for doing it. I always had this sense with activism that I would have to flip this switch from doing nothing to doing a ton, and I knew I wouldn't be able to manage that and that I'd inevitably get burnt out, but it definitely doesn't have to be that way. If you're worried about the politics of real-life groups, look, there's just not really a better way to say this. If there isn't a group in existence that lives up to your political stances, doesn't that kind of mean there just aren't very many people who do? Do you want to achieve political goals now, or do you want to complain that the world is doomed because basically everyone but you has irredeemable politics? If that's the position you're in, just give it a chance. I think you'll find that in any political group, there are a lot of people with a lot of different beliefs who have come together to achieve a specific goal. Just find a goal that you want to work toward and people you're willing to work with. I don't even care what it is, but you will feel a lot better than you do now. Just give it a chance. I'm hoping it's coming through that I'm not just talking about organizations. Organizations are a good option a lot of the time. They connect you to other politically similar people, and they can be working toward many different objectives at once. There are a lot of opportunities to meet like-minded people and work on something that you're passionate about. But there are other ways to get out of the online left bubble. If there's a mutual aid group in your community, that can be a good way to do some direct action, help people close to you, make your part of the world a little bit better. You can check on Facebook, Your Town Mutual Aid, or Google Around. It's pretty likely that one already exists, and you can just message the organizers to see how to get involved. For all of these, it's likely that you'll run into a lot of groups that just aren't very active. And that's just an unfortunate part of the process. Unfortunately, in some places your choices might end up more influenced by what's active than by what their politics are like, and it'll vary from place to place because, especially for organizations, the differences between local branches can be huge. You don't even really have to get involved in the traditional sense. Simply interacting with people in a more personal way rather than just posting and messaging can be really valuable. If you're not able to organize for whatever reason, I'd really recommend joining a reading or discussion group that either meets in person or through some kind of video conference, as long as you're getting that personal, not faceless interaction with other people in the group. I think a lot of people who mostly spend their time in political life online can kind of forget how different and more fulfilling personal interaction can be. Or perhaps you've just been isolated or marginalized for whatever reason, and your online connections are the most personal you've had. And I understand how that can feel comfortable and safe. But unfortunately, having left politics means that you can never be fully comfortable just hiding from the horrors of the world. All of those feelings of anger and fear and grief can only be helped so much by surrounding yourself with people who share your vision of the world without making any moves toward creating it. And the only thing that's ever helped that spirit sickness for me have been solidarity, working toward my political goals, and knowing other people who are doing the same. What do you really have to lose at this point? Hey, thanks for watching until the end. I hope this was helpful or compelling to some of you. This is one of the less stressful videos I've made, but I think I've proven to myself this could be another way of doing things. Definitely let me know what you thought in the comments, and I'm especially interested in your thoughts on this new format. I think it might take some time to settle into, but I wanted to get off to a good start with something I thought was worthwhile to talk about, and I don't think there's anything more vital than people getting organized. Hopefully you'll be seeing me again soon. Bye! Everyone was asking for more Athena in the last video, but she didn't really want to hang out today. She's been here the whole time, she's just been napping.